Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we are doing a comic book movie villain tier list. Now you might be questioning, why am I not doing this after Fantastic Four? Because that comes out about a week or so after I'm recording this. Good question. I didn't really have a video idea for this week and I shot out a question to my friends, and one of the suggestions was a villain tier list, and I really liked the idea. And ultimately, Fantastic Four would just be adding 2 villains, so if something majorly changes after that film comes out, I'll just update in a comment or in the description. And before I continue on, be sure to subscribe to the channel, give the video a thumbs up, it's a great help. Also feel free to check out my letterbox where I am very active. I post a lot of reviews, I log everything I watch over there, so feel free to check that out. So now, what are the specific criteria for the villains for this tier list? Well, first of all, I have chosen to just do the movies. So that's excluding stuff like Peacemaker and all of the MCU Disney Plus shows, so Agatha will not be on this list. The whatever people from Miss Marvel won't be on this list. It's mainly just to simplify it, because there's already a ton of villains I put for this list, and I'm also, maybe a bit of a cop-out, but doing only villains post the year 2000. So the original X-Men to now-ish. There are obviously some villains that I do not have on this list simply because I maybe haven't seen that film. Or maybe I have, and it's maybe a sequel to a movie that was from the 90s. Like, I have none of the Blade movies here because I have not seen Blade 3, but I have seen the first 2. While it did come out in the 2000s, is a sequel to a 90s film, so I just decided to exclude that. So, I have every X-Men movie villain, I have every Batman movie villain, and I have every Spider-Man movie villain, I have every DCEU villain, I have every DC movie villain in general, like the new Lex Luthor, for example, and of course every MCU villain. I believe there are around 120 to 125 villains I have in this list, so we have quite a bit of characters to discuss. But first up, what do these tiers mean? At the bottom we have the what category, meaning villains that are either incredibly unmemorable or just really bad. And then bad, they're kind of just bad villains. They don't really do much. They're uninteresting. While they might work for the plot of a film, they just don't have much character to them, or if they do have characterization, it's just dull. Okay, I have villains that work, but aren't necessarily all that memorable. They're serviceable for the story. And then in the good tier, self-explanatory. These are good villains. They might not reach the rank of being great, but they really work for the story that the film is going for, just on a level that's better than serviceable. Amazing, these are like great movie villains. They have great screen presence, or they have really solid motivations, or both. And then iconic tier are what, in my opinion, are some of the best villains depicted in movies, just period. I will obviously have some controversial picks, but for the most part, I don't think I have all that many opinions that divert from general consensus on these specific villains, but there's a lot of them to talk about, so let's get into it. Magneto, from the original X-Men, is obviously iconic. And for this specific iteration of Magneto, I'm just gonna go with every version he has, just to simplify it. That might contradict something later down the road I have for this video for one specific character, but whatever. Ian McKellen's Magneto is iconic. He's one of the best. First of all, Ian McKellen is incredible in the role, but you understand everything about him. You understand why he acts the way he does, you understand why he believes the things that he does, and he's not necessarily wrong, he's just going about things in a more violent way to incite more radical change. Like in the first X-Men film, he has this plot to turn one of the most anti-mutant senators into a mutant to sort of prove his point about mutants being people. And then in the third film, he's trying to prevent the X-gene cure from happening because he believes that mutants are superior. And then in the second film, I think is the most interesting because he isn't the direct antagonist of that film, and he works with the X-Men for most of it to take down Stryker, but he has his own goals in mind. He's a great villain, and I think one of his best performances from Ian McKellen, and this dude's an iconic actor. Next up is the 2002 Sam Raimi Green Goblin. I'm gonna put him in the amazing tier. I believe this is one of 2 characters on this list that I have 2 versions of, and for this version of Sam Raimi's Spider-Man, for this version of Sam Raimi's Green Goblin, I'm going to put him in the amazing tier. The main reason for that is because Willem Dafoe is just insanely awesome in this movie. And, similar to the new Lex Luthor, is just a really big hater. He just wants to torture Spider-Man. He doesn't have all that much of a motivation beyond that, but the screen presence is nothing short of legendary. The first of two Colin Farrell villains on this list is Colin Farrell's Bullseye from the Ben Affleck Daredevil movie. I really don't like that film. It doesn't help that I watched it after rewatching the original Netflix Daredevil series earlier this year, which is one of my favorite shows ever. And the depiction of Bullseye in that show is one of my all-time favorite comic book show or movie villains, period. But I'm going to unfortunately have to put him in the bad tier. His performance is solid, but his character is just a big nothing. Next up, I didn't really choose much of a good image for the Daredevil movie's Kingpin, but I'm going to put him in the okay tier. I think he's a big step up from the Colin Farrell Bullseye, who's just completely one-dimensional, mainly because of Michael Clark Duncan's performance. He's really solid in the role. I don't really have all that much to say about him, though. Generally speaking, he's probably my favorite part of that movie. Next up is Stryker from X-Men 2. I'm going to put him in the good tier. I think he's a really solid villain. He works exceptionally well for this movie. He's a big threat to the X-Men despite not being a mutant at all and just being a normal human. He just has a lot of resources behind his back and a lot of prejudice behind his back. Brian Cox is amazing in this movie, and that's probably the primary reason why he's in the good tier is because of his performance. He has plenty of depth, but I don't necessarily think he's as memorable as he could have been to be part of the amazing. And then we have Alfred Molina's Dr. Octopus from Spider-Man 2, who is also amazing. I think he's the best villain of the original Spider-Man trilogy. It also helps that Spider-Man 2 is the best movie in that trilogy, but Alfred Molina is amazing in the role. He gives a very deep performance that allows you to have sympathy for him, but he's also very much the villain. Everything he does is to finish his mad science project. And the fight scenes with him are great. That train scene is iconic for a reason, and the visual effects on the tentacles have really held up, and there's a reason why they brought him back from No Way Home, because he was so good. So next up is the first Batman movie villain in the list with Carmine Falcone from Batman Begins. I'm going to be using that pronunciation because that is the pronunciation that is used in the film, while the newer Batman continuity uses Falcone. I'm going to put him in the good tier. Batman Begins is a very interestingly structured movie because it's a film with 4 acts, and each act has its own villain. So while Carmine Falcone has his place in the first act, particularly in the origin of where Bruce Wayne goes off to find himself, he's the main villain of the second act of the film, where Bruce Wayne is getting all of the tech to become Batman. I'm putting him in the good tier because Tom Wilkinson is really great in the movie. Next up is Ra's al Ghul from Batman Begins, who I'm going to put in the amazing tier. Liam Neeson is awesome in this role. In the first act, he brings a real gravitas to the character that was really needed for a Batman movie, especially after the disaster that was Batman and Robin from the 90s. It brought in a world of class to the Batman franchise that it had not seen for a long time. And his motivations are really solid. In a way, he is the mirror to Bruce Wayne in this movie. They both fundamentally believe that Gotham is corrupt and needs fixing, but while Batman believes that it can be fixed, that it can be helped and rehabilitated, Ra's al Ghul sort of feels like it needs to be wiped off the face of the earth and started from scratch because of how corrupt it's become. And that creates a great clash in the final act of the film. Say what you will about the fight scene with all of the shaky camera going on, but he leaves a real lasting impact on the movie and throughout the Dark Knight trilogy as a whole. Next up is Scarecrow from Batman Begins, and I'm going to put him in the good tier. I'm going to put Scarecrow here and not higher because he is not the main villain. Though he is the main villain of the third act of the film, he is not the main villain of the film as a whole. His mask is creepy and scary. The fear gas he uses on Batman is exactly what I would want out of Scarecrow. And Cillian Murphy is obviously amazing in the role. That's why he was brought back to do cameos in The Dark Knight and The Dark Knight Rises. But he doesn't have nearly as much development or as much impact as Ra's al Ghul does. Dark Phoenix from X-Men The Last Stand, I was debating on putting here or not, just because I wasn't sure if she really was a villain, but I decided to anyway, and I don't like this depiction of Dark Phoenix. It's unfortunate that both depictions of this character have been just super underwhelming. Next up is Kevin Spacey's version of Lex Luthor from Superman Returns, and I think he's okay. Elephant in the room, he's played by Kevin Spacey. I'm not even gonna get into that. Spacey is good in the role, but I'm not really a big fan of the maniacal Lex wants to make money from land schemes that he's had in many of these Superman movies. The finale of the Spider-Man trilogy had 3 villains, which contributed to it being overbloated. You can have multiple villains in a movie as long as it works cohesively, but Spider-Man 3 is a movie with so many subplots where the villains don't really connect until the last 20 minutes that it becomes a mess to watch. New Goblin is okay. As a villain, he's fine. The character is great because Harry Osborn is a great character and he was built up throughout the whole trilogy. And the fight scene early on with Peter and New Goblin is probably my favorite fight scene from Spider-Man 3. That scene is really awesome. It's just he doesn't get as much of a focus as he should. Especially after that scene, he gets the weird cliched amnesia subplot that I'm not a fan of. Sandman is good. He's a very sympathetic villain where he does the things that he does to help his daughter, even though it alienates him from his daughter and his wife. He just doesn't know what else to do. And then the Sandman creation scene is really well done visual effects wise. And really in general, the sand effects in that film are great. I think he's probably the best subplot of Spider-Man 3. And the symbiote suit fight with him in the subway train is really great. Venom from Spider-Man 3, I hate to be cliche, but this is a very bad depiction of Venom. It's unfortunate that we haven't had a good depiction of Venom in the movies so far. He's supposedly the main villain of Spider-Man 3, but Eddie Brock's storyline is shoved way to the side, and then one small thing sets off Eddie Brock in the film. Like, he cheats, and then he expects to get away with it, but then when Peter exposes him for cheating, he wants to kill Peter Parker now. I think if you want to have an ultra hater of a villain, just a maniacal bad guy, I think you need to have a little bit more haterade, if you could say it that way, because he has the one scene, and that is just a big snap in him, and I'm not a big fan of Topher Grace in the role. The visual effects on him are great, though. The first villain of the MCU with Ironmonger, I think Obadiah Stane is okay, mainly because of Jeff Bridges' performance. Other than that, I'm not generally a fan of Obadiah Stane as a villain. I think he's just fine. Abomination from the Hulk. This is probably my least favorite MCU film to date, and I'm not really a big Abomination fan, so I'm just gonna put him in the bad. I don't have that much to say about him, so just bad. Heath Ledger's Joker from The Dark Knight. Nah, I think this guy's terrible. I think he's super overrated. No, obviously. I think Heath Ledger's Joker is the greatest movie villain of all time. He's not a particularly complex villain, but man, he works. He is one of the most definitive depictions of the Joker, this living embodiment of chaos. He's intelligent, he has deep philosophy that rings throughout the whole film, and Heath Ledger's performance is arguably the greatest in Hollywood history. One of the best villains, period, in anything. Harvey Dent from The Dark Knight as Two-Face, I think, is one of the most underrated movie characters ever. The Dark Knight is widely regarded for a reason. Heath Ledger's Joker is so good that he kind of overshadows how good the rest of the movie is. And Two-Face's decline is tragic and interesting. Aaron Eckhart is incredible in this movie. You understand where he's coming from. You see this white knight of Gotham City broken down and down and down to his breaking point, and it leads to the end where Batman has to kill him to save Jim Gordon's family. It's really tragic, and I think it's a fantastic depiction of the character. Next up is Deadpool, quote unquote, from X-Men Origins Wolverine. Yeah. I don't know what they were thinking. Thankfully, we got a redemption for Deadpool later on, because what was going on then? Next up is Sabretooth from X-Men Origins Wolverine. This is one of my least favorite X-Men movies. I think it's a big mess. The action's not fun. The visual effects are really bad. But Liev Schreiber as Sabretooth is okay. He isn't really given all that much depth other than the fact that he's Logan's brother, but he's fine. The third MCU film with Iron Man 2 has 2 very contrasting villains. Justin Hammer is very fun, mainly because of Sam Rockwell. He just oozes charisma in this role. That's why he's a lot of fun. But Whiplash is terrible. I want my bird. I'm sorry for that accent, but that's all I remember from this character. He hates Tony Stark because his dad was betrayed by Tony Stark's father, and Mickey Rourke is really bad in this movie. I think Whiplash is the reason why Iron Man 2 is, other than The Incredible Hulk, probably my least favorite MCU. I don't dislike the film, but it's certainly underwhelming compared to the rest of the franchise. And then we have Laufey from the first Thor movie. He's fine. He's not really a bad villain. He's serviceable for the story, mainly because of Loki, who I'm going to put the Thor 1 version of Loki in the good tier. Other than Green Goblin, I have two different Lokis on this list just because I decided to do it that way. I don't know why, but I only had one version of Ian McKellen's Magneto, but I have two Lokis. Fight me, whatever. Ultimately, in the first Thor movie, Loki is just a boy who wants the approval of his father. He also wants to genocide Jotunheim, which is where he was originally from, which is obviously bad, but he just wants the love of his father. So he's really solid, but I don't think he's a great villain. Sebastian Shaw from X-Men First Class is a very good villain. The main reason he's very good is because of his connection to Magneto. He killed Magneto's mother, and he and Magneto share the exact same philosophy on mutants. In a way, they're very much right in how mutants deserve to be treated with equal respect, but they go about it in too violent and too radical of an approach. But he killed Magneto's mom, and Magneto obviously resents him for that, and it creates a really strong dynamic within the film. Next up is Michael Fassbender's Magneto, which I'm also going to toss up in the iconic, even though he's not directly the villain of any of the X-Men movies he appears in. He's not the main villain of First Class. He is the main antagonist in the past section of the finale of Days of Future Past, but generally speaking, he is not the villain of that movie. And he serves as sort of a henchman to Apocalypse in most of X-Men Apocalypse. And then Dark Phoenix, he's mostly on the good guy's side. But Michael Fassbender is just as good, if not better than Ian McKellen in this role. I think both of these actors really embodied Magneto and made him one of the best on-screen villains. Next up is the Red Skull from Captain America: The First Avenger, and I'm going to toss him in the okay tier. He's serviceable for the story. He works, and he does have a really great appearance in Infinity War and Endgame, but generally speaking, he's not one of my favorites. Loki from the first Avengers movie, however, compared to the first Thor, I think is amazing. I think his screen presence just pops off the screen, unlike the first Thor movie. He's a little more dialed back in the first Thor movie, meanwhile Tom Hiddleston gets to go full Loki in the first Avengers. He's menacing, he's funny, and he gives the Avengers a real threat. He legitimately tears them apart from the inside, but at the same time is the catalyst for why the Avengers come together in the first place. He's a great villain for a great movie. The Lizard from The Amazing Spider-Man 1. Oh boy, yeah, I don't really know what they were thinking with this guy. Kirk Connors is a very relatable and understandable villain for most of the movie, but then his third act scheme comes into play and he wants to turn everyone into lizards. Yeah, okay. Bane from The Dark Knight Rises. Bane gets a lot of hate for some reason, I see, but I love Bane in this movie. There's a little twist with Talia that is probably the weakest aspect of The Dark Knight Rises, but Bane, he is menacing. He's the only Batman villain to really have physically challenged Batman in that trilogy. Like, Ra's al Ghul was more equal, but Bane completely wrecks him. Granted, he hadn't been Batman for many, many years, but still, he completely destroys Batman in that tunnel fight, which Chris Nolan's Batman movies are rightfully criticized for some of the fight choreography, but I think that sewer tunnel fight scene is genuinely really great. It has really solid, subdued choreography, and it feels very realistic. The Bane voice is iconic, whether you like it or not. I personally love it. I think it works really well for the character. Tom Hardy is amazing in the role. Talia al Ghul as a villain in that movie, I'm going to say is bad. I think the twist is super obvious, and Marion Cotillard is great in the movie until she's the villain, in which she becomes really one note and flat for some reason, and her death scene is kind of hilarious. Like, I love The Dark Knight Rises. I think it's super underrated, but yeah, I understand why that part of the story is criticized. Next up is Aldrich Killian from Iron Man 3. I'm going to put him in the bad tier. He's basically a worse version of Syndrome from The Incredibles, which I'm not knocking Syndrome from The Incredibles, which I completely omitted from this list for some reason. Sorry about that. He's just not interesting. They had set up a really interesting and really threatening Mandarin in the first half of the movie, but that turns out to be Trevor. And while I think it's a funny twist, it doesn't lead to a very good villain. Next up is Man of Steel, one of the most controversial comic book movies of all time. Personally, I really like Man of Steel. If you've seen my Superman review, you'd know that. Faora, as one of the Kryptonian sort of henchmen to Zod, is great. As a villain, she's fine because she's just kind of a henchman, but her screen presence is great. As the kids say, she was aura farming the whole movie. The Smallville fight is amazing, particularly because of her. Speaking of Man of Steel being controversial, Zod. I think Zod's an amazing villain. I think he's one of the reasons why Man of Steel works for me so much. He is a man who was bred to protect Krypton, and he failed. He tried to regain control of Krypton, but he failed, and when Krypton exploded, he was released from the Phantom Zone, along with his cronies, however you would put it, and sort of adrift in space for many, many years until they discovered Kal-El's location. So, at his core, he's just trying to protect Krypton in a very violent, very wrong way, for sure. But at his core, that is what he is trying to do. And Michael Shannon's pretty good in the role. There are some lines that are a little hammy, for sure. But then you get that final battle in Metropolis between him and Superman, and that is an awesome fight. Say what you will about the destruction that happens, but that fight scene itself is incredible. Next up is Silver Samurai from The Wolverine. I'm going to put him in the bad tier. I think it's a little ridiculous that the opening scene sets up this character that Wolverine saves in Japan in World War II, and then all these years later, this guy is obsessed with having eternal life by stealing it from Logan. It's whatever. The movie itself is pretty good, has some pretty solid action sequences, and it's a lot more grounded and gritty in comparison to other comic book movies for a while, and then it becomes a big Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles looking CGI fight at the end, and I'm not really a big fan of that. Malekith from Thor the Dark World is laughed at for a reason. He's just a boring nothing character. He wants to use the Reality Stone at the convergence of the Nine Realms because... Yeah, I don't know either. He's just kind of a boring and bland villain. Winter Soldier from Captain America the Winter Soldier. Now, obviously, Bucky was only a villain for one movie, and he didn't even have all that much screen time, but I'm putting him in the iconic tier. I think what he brings to that movie is just so fantastic. The moral and physical challenge to Captain America in that movie, along with all of the other things that Cap is faced with in that film. Alexander Pierce is really the main villain of Captain America the Winter Soldier, and I think he's underrated. I think he's an amazing villain. His motivations make sense, even if it is basically modern-day Nazism, but his central belief is that he believes he's protecting the world from eliminating so-called threats, which is obviously bad, but from his perspective, he thinks he's the good guy, and that makes him a compelling villain. Electro from The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Oof, on these next three villains. Amazing Spider-Man 2 is my least favorite Spider-Man movie. By far, easily, I think it is such a big mess of a movie, even more so than Spider-Man 3. But I'm not going to put him in the what tier. I'm going to put him in the bad tier, mainly because the visual effects he has and the fight scenes he has are very cool and very memorable. His motivation is stupid, his dialogue is stupid. He's just not given much of a character, and he's given powers by a vat of eels. Okay, and then Amazing Spider-Man 2 Green Goblin, I'm going to put in the what tier because, dear Lord, what were they thinking? And then Amazing Spider-Man 2 Rhino, I'm also going to put in the what tier because he's just kind of a dude at the beginning, and then at the end he shows up in a big rhino suit. It's like, oh, okay, sure. Oliver Trask from Days of Future Past, which, in my opinion, remains the best X-Men film, not including Logan or Deadpool. Including the whole Fox universe, I think it's the second best of the Fox-era Marvel films. I'm going to put Trask in the good tier, mainly because Peter Dinklage is really good in the role. Days of Future Past has a lot of antagonists and side antagonists to it, like the Sentinels and Stryker again, and Magneto. But Trask is really the main reason why the Sentinels are even there, and I think he's solidly well done. Next up is Ronan from Guardians of the Galaxy. I'm going to put Ronan in okay. He's not very interesting. He's a religious zealot who holds a grudge against Xandar and wants to kill the Xandarian people out of revenge. But the main reason I'm not putting Ronan in the bad tier is I think he contrasts really well with the personality and general silliness of the main Guardians themselves. He's not a super personal villain to these characters, so having something they can riff off of, plus his visual design is pretty solid. Ultron from Age of Ultron, I think is good. I think he's underrated. I'm not a big fan of the weird robot teeth he has. I think that's very strange. But James Spader is perfect for the role, and his motivation kind of makes sense. He scrolls the internet for all of 5 seconds and immediately thinks that humanity should go the way of the dinosaur, which, to be honest, I can't necessarily blame him, especially with the way that American politics are going now. Yellow Jacket from Ant-Man. Similar to Ronan, I'm not putting him in the bad tier simply because he contrasts really well with Ant-Man himself. He's a very serviceable villain, but he's also very surface level. He mainly is just going insane and wants money and wants revenge on Hank Pym, but his performance is also really solid. Ajax, aka Francis, from Deadpool 1, is okay. He's mainly okay because it's really funny to see Deadpool make fun of him. Other than that, he's a fairly boring villain guy with a British accent, which makes sense because the movie's making fun of that very trope. Oh boy, Lex Luthor from Batman v Superman. Lex Luthor from this movie is one of the main reasons I do not like Batman v Superman. I think Lex Luthor was totally miscast. I do not think Jesse Eisenberg encapsulates this character well at all. He feels more like a slightly less loony Riddler than a Lex Luthor. Plus, his plan is insanely convoluted. Like, say what you will about Zemo's plan, I'll get to him in a little bit. Zemo's plan was convoluted, but he had pivots and didn't rely on everything going perfectly to plan. If this version of Lex Luthor's plan doesn't go perfectly, then the movie doesn't happen. And the whole bullet storyline going on with Lois Lane is very stupid because it's obvious from the beginning that Superman didn't use bullets because he's Superman, and why would Superman use bullets? But whatever. But that also leads to Doomsday, in which they completely waste Doomsday in the movie and kill Superman off immediately, and he looks ugly. I don't like the way they did Doomsday in the movie. The fight scene itself is pretty cool, I'll admit, but still. Zemo from Captain America Civil War, I think, is an amazing villain. He doesn't necessarily have the biggest screen presence, but he has one of the strongest motivations of any MCU villain. He was from Sokovia, and when Sokovia, became a crater, his family died in that crossfire, and he wants revenge on the Avengers, but he knows he can't kill the Avengers because then they'd become martyrs, and he can't kill them physically because he's just a normal guy, so he tears them apart from the inside to ruin them and their image. I think he's great. Sadly, I cannot say the same for Apocalypse from X-Men Apocalypse. Oscar Isaac is great, but I don't think he was the right fit for this role. He's not very physically imposing, and the makeup is really good actually, but I don't know if it really works for this movie. And he's just not a very interesting villain, which is a shame because Apocalypse is one of the most interesting X-Men villains from the comics. Oh boy, Suicide Squad, Jared Leto's Joker. Yeah, I don't know what they were doing there. Let's just ignore that dude. And then Enchantress from Suicide Squad. What were they doing there? She's just dancing, belly dancing the whole movie, and she wants to be bad guy because she's a bad guy and has a big space laser at a time when we kind of moved on from the big lasers in the sky. Dormammu from Doctor Strange, I think he's okay. He doesn't get much, obviously, to do because he's only in the last 15 minutes of the movie, but the Dormammu I've come to bargain scene is just iconic, and I can't help but love that. Caecilius from Doctor Strange 1 I think is bad, unfortunately. His motivation honestly makes sense. He views time as the ultimate villain of humanity, and the Dark Dimension is a place where time doesn't exist, so he's a zealot in Dormammu and believes that everyone should join the Dark Dimension, even though that's Dormammu propaganda. The problem here is while his motivation makes sense and is compelling, the character is not compelling. He doesn't get really any development other than some fight scenes, and those fight scenes are great. But the main reason I think he's bad is that they completely waste Mads Mikkelsen, which is a shame. Ares from Wonder Woman, I'm gonna put in the okay tier. He's kind of whatever. I don't think he's a bad villain. His motivation makes sense. He's not really actually puppet controlling World War I. He's just influencing people through minor suggestions every once in a while. But at the same time, the big fight at the end of Wonder Woman kind of undermines the message of the movie, is that sometimes people are bad and we have to overcome that together. So you know what? I'm actually going to put him in the bad tier. Thinking about it through, I don't like the way that Ares is depicted in that film. And then Dr. Poison as well. I'm going to throw in Dr. Poison and the general guy from Wonder Woman. They're just kind of generic World War I mad scientist villains. They're whatever. Donald Pierce from Logan is good. Boyd Holbrook makes this villain. He's kind of just a mercenary who is hunting Laura and Wolverine by association. The reason why he works is that the movie's script and story for Logan himself is so good and compelling. It is one of the top 3 comic book movies of all time for a reason. The villain would not necessarily be one of those reasons, but he's good in the movie. And Xander Rice, who serves as sort of Donald Pierce's boss, is kind of a side villain in the movie, even though he is technically the main villain. He's kind of okay. He serves the movie, which is more important than anything. And unlike some of these villains in the bad tier who are just bad and poorly done, he's well done, but not necessarily an amazing villain. Next up is Ego from Guardians of the Galaxy 2. I think Ego is incredibly underrated. His motivation is, his own ego. He believes everything should be him. And while not necessarily a complex motivation, it makes sense for the character and it really works for the movie. creates for a very compelling third act, and his relationship with Peter Quill is one of the big hearts of Guardians 2 and how it connects with his relationships with all of the other Guardians. Aisha is fine, she works for the movie. She's kind of thrown to the side for the middle act of the story and is just kind of like a thing to fight for the third act. So I wouldn't put her in the good tier, but I don't think she's bad either. She's serviceable. Vulture from Spider-Man Homecoming, I'm going to put in the good tier. A few years back, I would have put in the amazing tier, but as I keep rewatching Homecoming over the years, I don't find myself as compelled by Michael Keaton's Vulture as I used to. He's still a very good villain, very relatable and understandable motivations, being the blue-collar worker trying to help his family. And the fight scene at the very end is great, along with the car ride to Homecoming. That's one of the best scenes in any Spider-Man movie. But I wouldn't necessarily say that he's amazing. I have similar thoughts to Hela from Thor Ragnarok. She's mainly elevated because of Cate Blanchett, who is just so fun in Thor Ragnarok. She doesn't have a super deep or complex villain motivation. She's just a bad person, and sometimes a movie just needs a bad person as their villain. Oh boy, Steppenwolf from Justice League. Yeah, this is one of the worst villains I've ever seen in any movie. The CGI on him is horrific, and he's a nothing burger character. There's nothing to this character whatsoever. On the very opposite side of Justice League's Steppenwolf is Killmonger from Black Panther. I'm putting him in the iconic tier. For a long time, one of the big complaints people had with the MCU was that their villains weren't all that interesting. I very vividly remember Killmonger being one of the first ones that had people genuinely blown away and shocked by how compelling the character was. In a way, he's the deuteragonist of Black Panther along with T'Challa himself. They both have intertwining stories, and you understand where he comes from. He wants to help people, but he's also resentful and rageful, which hinders his ability to want to help his people. But he was also neglected by Wakanda and wants revenge for that, but he also wants Wakanda to prosper. It's very interesting, and it creates a great dynamic between him and T'Challa. And T'Challa doesn't necessarily disagree with him, which makes their conflict really interesting. And by the end of the movie, T'Challa learns from Killmonger and implements things that Killmonger would have implemented, albeit T'Challa does it much less violently, much more peacefully, and less publicly, I suppose. But T'Challa learns from Killmonger. And his scene in Black Panther Wakanda Forever is one of my favorite scenes in that movie. Claw from Black Panther 1 is good. I think Andy Serkis is great in this movie. He's also very good in the small role he has in Age of Ultron. But I'm sad that they killed him off. I kind of wish we got to see more of Claw. Thanos from Infinity War and Endgame. Yeah, iconic. Duh. One of the best villains of all time. Period. He's iconic. We all know this snap by now. Balanced, as all things should be. We love Thanos. We hate Thanos. We understand him. He's flawed. His motivation is to ultimately make the universe better. He does it through very, very bad means, and he's clearly a psycho and a very evil person, but he believes himself to be the hero. And he's the ultimate threat for the Avengers. Physically, he kicks the snot out of most of them. Like even Captain Marvel, who took a headbutt straight from Thanos and didn't flinch at all. She gets tossed around by Thanos. The closest person there was Wanda. The kid from Deadpool 2, I'm gonna be honest, I do not remember his name. I'm gonna put him in the okay tier. I don't have much to say about him. He works for the movie. Ghost from Ant-Man 2. I've always believed that Ghost was a more compelling character than as a villain, which is why I'm putting her in the villain tier. I think she's a very interesting character, but as a villain, I don't really think she works all that well, unfortunately. She's not very threatening, and I've always kind of had an issue with Ant-Man and the Wasp, where I think they could have just talked out their issues rather than fighting it out. The final conflict feels a little bit contrived because of that. I like the film, but it's not one of my favorite MCU films because of this character. I really like her as a character, though. And while I wish she got a little bit more to do in Thunderbolts, she's a lot of fun in Thunderbolts. Riot from Venom 1, I'm gonna be honest, I don't really care about the Venom movies, and I don't think any other villains were all that good. Riot was just Grey Venom, a CEO dude who wanted money. King Orm from Aquaman, I'm gonna put him in the good tier. I think Aquaman's a fairly underrated movie. It's a very comic book movie. It's very silly, and it doesn't care that it's silly. It wears it on its sleeve. Like Ocean Master's costume is big in purple and silver. It's great. But like his motivation makes a lot of sense. He's upset that the surface world is polluting and destroying the seas. Yeah, that makes sense. Hate to say it, but us humans are kind of terrible to the ocean. And then Black Manta from Aquaman, and to another extent Aquaman 2, is also good. I'm glad that they went for it with the with the Black Manta suit. They went for the big bulgy eyes for both films. I don't particularly like Aquaman 2 all that much, but I like Black Manta as a character. Olivia Octavius from Into the Spider-Verse, I'm going to put in the good tier. She's kind of just a side villain, but she's really interesting and well done, despite not having all that much screen time, and Catherine Hahn does a great job voicing her. Prowler from Into the Spider-Verse is great. Actually, I'm going to put him in the amazing tier. Sort of like Olivia Octavius, he doesn't have all that much screen time, but he leaves an impact. Obviously, he's Miles' uncle, and he dies. And it's very tragic and it's heartbreaking, and he also gets one of the sickest villain themes I've ever heard in a movie. Super well done. And then Kingpin from Into the Spider-Verse is a very good villain. He just wants his family back. That's an understandable motivation. He doesn't get all that much to do, but he really works for Into the Spider-Verse. Into the Spider-Verse is one of the best comic book movies of all time. Not necessarily because of its villains, but because of everything else. But Kingpin really works. I'm just going to do these next two at the same time. We have the Supreme Intelligence and Yon-Rogg from Captain Marvel. I'm going to put both of them in the bad tier. I don't think either of them are particularly compelling at all, which is a shame because they have Jude Law playing one of the villains, and he's a great actor. Dr. Sivana from Shazam 1 is fine. I think he mostly works because Mark Strong is a great actor. I don't really have all that much to say about him. The alien chick from X-Men Dark Phoenix, I'm going to put in the what tier. X-Men Dark Phoenix is kind of a disaster of a movie, unfortunately. And it's a real shame that the one superhero movie that Jessica Chastain has done has been a really bad one. Because she's one of my favorite actresses, and she just completely wasted it. Here's a hot take. Mysterio is awesome. I love me a petty, hateful villain, and he nails it. The look is great. Jake Gyllenhaal is amazing. The way that the illusions are used are so creative, especially for like the modern comic book movie, using like the CGI suit and these holographic drones. I think the way that they did the illusion scenes are some of the best in any of the MCU, just period, let alone the Spider-Man movie. I personally have always loved the way that they've done Mysterio here. I know that's not the same for everybody, but I personally love it. Black Mask from Birds of Prey, he's fine. He's a mobster, and he's played very well by Ewan McGregor. He's just fine, though. The Doctor Lady from The New Mutants, I've only seen this movie once, and I wasn't particularly impressed by it, and I can't remember her for the life of me, so I'm just going to put her in the what tier. Wonder Woman 1984 was an unfortunate swing and a miss of a movie, and one of the reasons why it was a swing and a miss was because of Cheetah's characterization. She's kind of just another, like, syndrome kind of character. I don't really get what they were going for there. That said, I think the best part of Wonder Woman 1984 was Maxwell Lord, and not necessarily because the character was all that in-depth or the Wish plot was great. The Wish plot was quite bad. It didn't really make much sense. But Maxwell Lord as a character is very compelling. He just wanted to live up to his son, and he wanted to make his son proud. And Pedro Pascal is great in this movie. Like, legitimate. I'm actually going to put him in the good tier. I think he's easily the best part of that complete mess of a movie. Darkseid from Zack Snyder's Justice League, I'm going to put in the okay tier. He looks like Darkseid, his voice is good, but he doesn't get much to do. As much as I'm glad that the Snyderverse is dead, it is kind of a shame that we never got to see the fulfillment of how this version of Darkseid would have been used. I very much look forward to when we get a proper introduction to Darkseid later on in James Gunn's new universe. Steppenwolf from Zack Snyder's Justice League is legitimately good. Like a massive upgrade over the Justice League. Just like look at the visual between the two of them, it's not even close. The visuals are so much better on him. The voice is better, even though it's the same voice actor. Excuse me for butchering his name, but Ciarán Hinds, I think that's how you say his name. I hope I'm not butchering that. I probably am. His voice is great, but he just sounds better in this movie. He's a lot more physically imposing. He's bigger, and he's kind of sympathetic. He just wants to be able to go home back to his family. Like, he's only collecting the mother boxes and doing these bad things just to get back to his family. Granted, his family is bad, and his nephew is Darkseid, like most being in the universe, but I think the way that he's done in Zack Snyder's Justice League is very good. Dreykov and Taskmaster from Black Widow. I am a Black Widow defender. I quite enjoy that film. I do not enjoy Dreykov or Taskmaster whatsoever in that film. There's a reason that literally not even a minute into her screen time in Thunderbolts, they kill her off because they wasted the character. And hopefully they can get in a real Taskmaster at some point. And Dreykov is just bad guy Russian dude with a bad Russian accent. Starro the Conqueror, I don't know why I used this image to be honest, but Starro the Conqueror from the Suicide Squad I think is okay. Actually, I don't think he's okay. I think he's good. He's not even really the villain. He's just a creature trying to exist, And then he's captured in space and tortured for decades by the Thinker, who I'm going to put the Thinker in the okay tier, mainly because Peter Capaldi is very fun in the movie. He's not necessarily a super compelling villain, but still. Starro is interesting because he's just trying to exist, and then he's tortured for who knows how many years. So when he gets his revenge on the Thinker, it's very satisfying, first of all. But the way that the imagery is used with Starro is also very disturbing, and it's just an angry creature lashing out in the final act of the film. And that's one of the main reasons why the Suicide Squad is just so good. That even something like Big Starfish Kaiju is treated with a lot of empathy and art, which is one of the best things that James Gunn does in his films, is treat everything with a great sense of empathy. Wenwu from Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, also known as the Real Mandarin, he's an amazing villain. A, Tony Leung is incredible in the film, and B, his motivation is just super sympathetic. He wants his wife back. He's being manipulated, but he wants his wife. And the way that they visualize the Ten Rings, awesome. I can't wait to see Shang-Chi again. It's been too long. Carnage from Let There Be Carnage, he's okay. Woody Harrelson's fine in the role. The visuals are pretty good. The CGI on Carnage is good, but I don't have much to say about that. It's unfortunate that he's not higher because Carnage is one of the coolest comic characters, period. Next up is the lead trio of villains from Eternals. I'm gonna go with Crow first because he's just kind of there. He's a deviant that gets a smart mind, and he's just like, I want revenge. Like, okay, there's something there, but then they don't do anything with it. And then I'm gonna put both Icarus and Arishem the Judge in the okay tier. I think Icarus is interesting because he is so devoted to Arishem's cause that he's willing to fight and potentially kill his family to keep Arishem's cause and purpose of Earth alive with the birth of Tiamat. I think it's a shame that he's pretty much probably only going to be in this one movie because Richard Madden's great, but I think he's one of the more compelling aspects of Eternals. And then Arishem the Judge, I think, is interesting because he's not evil. He's just existing, and he's trying to keep the natural order of life. He doesn't get much screen time, which is why I'm not putting him any higher, but I think that's what makes the character interesting. So here is the reason why I decided to separate Goblin from Spider-Man 1 and Goblin from No Way Home, is because I think the Goblin from No Way Home is better. He only gets really 2 Green Goblin scenes, and both of those scenes are, in my opinion, legendary. The apartment scene is chilling, and it's one of the best short fights in the MCU. It's very brutal for a Spider-Man fight, and he ultimately kills Aunt May. And then the finale at the Statue of Liberty is just so good, and it's a fun final battle, and then he shows up and makes it intense. And Willem Dafoe portrays this character with both incredible malice and hatred in his voice, but also sympathy and a bit of a patheticness. I don't know if that's the right word to describe the way he uses the Norman Osborn side of him in the film, but just this person who needs help. And I think that's what makes him so compelling in this movie, particularly for me at least, is that more pronounced duality. And then I'm going to put the No Way Home version of Electro and the No Way Home version of Dr. Octopus in the okay tier. Dr. Octopus in this movie is not really a villain. He has one really cool fight scene on the bridge, and then for most of it, he's sort of locked in his own tentacles, and then he becomes a good guy. But he's still Alfred Molina as Dr. Octopus. He's great. I mean, come on. And then Electro is just a big upgrade over this version of Electro. Jamie Foxx feels like he has a lot more charisma in the film. He doesn't look like a weird blue dude. We get like the authentic yellow Electro, and there's some really cool visuals that goes on there in the final battle. I think he's much better in this film than in The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Next up, The Batman. This is good. I'm going to put the Riddler in Amazing. I think the way they do the Riddler in this movie as like a Jigsaw, Zodiac 7 style killer is so good. There's also a little bit of commentary on internet culture and being radicalized, but also he feels very justified in what he does and trying to expose the corruption of Gotham City. And he's really intense, and Paul Dano he's so good. I think Carmine Falcone from this movie, John Turturro, is amazing. His performance is fantastic. I think it's easily my favorite John Turturro performance, even above Severance. I was actually a little nervous when I found out that he was playing Falcone because I had never seen him in anything I liked prior to then. I hadn't seen stuff like Big Lebowski until then. All I knew about was the Transformers films. So I was very nervous about that, and he kind of blew me away. He really is the main villain for the middle act of the film, and he's this intense, straight-up vile mob boss but he never really makes his vocal tone go above other than a few moments. And there's something really ominous and threatening about that. I think the way he does that is great. Now, I know I said I was going to exclude TV shows, but I have to put Penguin in the iconic tier. If we were just going based off of the movie, I'd put him in the amazing tier because Colin Farrell completely embodies this character. The makeup is insane. You can't even tell it's Colin Farrell, and he's just a lot of fun to watch. But then the Penguin show, which is, I think, one of the best seasons of television I've ever seen, really gives this character a lot of depth. He is one of the most evil, selfish, and straight up vile comic book movie villain ever because of that show. And I know it's a bit of a cheat, but I have to put him in the iconic. Matt Smith, aka Milo from Morbius. Yeah, it's Morbin time. Wanda from Multiverse of Madness. I don't care. Iconic. Wanda in general is my favorite MCU character, and I'm going to try as best as I can to avoid ranting about Marvel's treatment of her in the last few years, but I'm a big Multiverse of Madness defender, and one of the main reasons is because of Wanda. I think right now Wanda is the MCU's most compelling character, and I think they've really been wasting a big opportunity by not having her there. Legitimately, if she's not in Doomsday, I might give up on the MCU, no matter how good Fantastic Four is, no matter how good the next Spider-Man movie is, no matter how good Doomsday even is. If she's not in Doomsday, I will be very pissed off, man. I have a lot of my own personal reasons for that, and I won't go into that now. But Elizabeth Olsen deserves to come back. She needs to come back. Fans have been dying and begging for her to come back for the past 3 years. It's been 3 years since she supposedly died. But whatever. Like I said, Wanda is my favorite MCU character. The way they built her up in WandaVision instantly made her one of the best. And then Multiverse of Madness really cemented her as my favorite character. She's complex, she's broken, she's hurt, she's confused. I mean, it is a little bit of a cheat that they use the Darkhold as an excuse to why she's suddenly so bad. But for me, it works. She's a character that, while she grew in WandaVision, she needed to figure something out, and while the Darkhold allowed her to figure stuff out about her, it also corrupted her mind. And ultimately, she just wants her kids. And no matter what some people say, her kids in WandaVision were real. That show even says that they were real. I believe Monica Rambeau says that she might have made them in that universe with her own magic, but she's very much real. And then the Agatha All Along show very much proves that they're real with Billy. And supposedly Tommy's going to be in the Vision show. We'll see about that. I hope they at least tease Wanda in that show a little bit. If not, she better show up in Doomsday, or else I'm going to be a very upset Greg. She's amazing. Even if it was just this one movie, I would have put her here, but because of my own personal bias and WandaVision and everything she went through from Age of Ultron to Endgame, iconic. Gore the God Butcher from Thor Love and Thunder could have been an iconic villain, but he's just good. It is a bit of a shame that he is just good, because this movie utterly wastes both the character and Christian Bale. Yet he still manages to be good because he's Christian Bale, and the scenes that he has are the best scenes in the movie. His motivation is authentic and it feels real. He feels slighted by the gods who he worshipped for so long, but the problem here is we never get to see any of the gods being butchered from a character named Gore the God Butcher. He's easily the best part of the movie, which is a good thing, but that's ultimately the problem with Thor Love and Thunder, I think, is that there's a lot of great things in that film, but it's not long. Like, every great thing in that movie is very short or not focused on all that much, and then it goes back to the silly, weird humor jokes. I don't even dislike that movie, but there's a lot of missed opportunities there, especially with Christian Bale being there. Next up, we got Devil Dude Sabak from Black Adam. Yeah, no. Bad, no. Namor from Wakanda Forever. Amazing. Personally, I think Wakanda Forever is really underrated, and Namor is one of my favorite aspects of that. I think the actor does a great job. I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce his name so I don't butcher it. I'm gonna apologize for that, but he does a great job, and I can't wait to see him in Doomsday. Kang from Quantumania. Okay, here's the thing. Kang is the best part of Quantumania, and he's the worst part of Quantumania. Kang is a good villain. Jonathan Majors clearly showed up, despite the weaker script for Quantumania. He's intimidating, they got the look right, but he's ultimately defeated by a bunch of ants. They make the big multiversal threat not threatening in this movie. Like, yeah, I get he gets back up and he kind of beats the snot out of Ant-Man in the final fight of that movie. Like, Ant-Man barely gets a punch off. Ant-Man gets completely destroyed by a weaponless, techless Kang, which I think is pretty cool. But then he gets zapped into his own portal and then dies. It's like, oh okay, thank you for killing off the main Kang before we even really got to know him. MODOK, what were they doing here, dude? The CGI looks bad, mainly because of the design they went with. I think making MODOK Darren, aka Yellow Jacket from the first Ant-Man, was honestly a great idea, but they make him way too jokey and way too bizarre for this movie. He also just looks bad and he's not funny. The Shazam 2 villains, I can't even remember their names, if I'm being honest. They got Lucy Liu and Helen Mirren to play the characters, and I can't remember them for the life of me. So I'm going to put them in the what tier. The High Evolutionary from Guardians of the Galaxy 3, he's going into the Amazing tier simply because of how utterly hateful this character is. I despise the High Evolutionary, and that is a good thing. James Gunn was going for a villain that you hated with every bit of your soul, and every time he's on screen, it makes my blood boil in the same way that grifters on YouTube make my blood boil. Everything he says crawls under my skin, it's vile, it's hateful, but he also thinks he's the hero of his own story. He thinks he's trying to make a perfect society when in reality, he just hates the way things are, rather than trying to make things perfect. I hope I don't butcher the name, but Chukwudi Iwuji is amazing in this role. He was also great in Peacemaker. And when the Guardians finally do give this beat down on him at the end, it's so satisfying. What he does to Rocket in the flashbacks is so heinous. That movie makes me bawl my eyes out like a 7-year-old, mainly because of those Rocket flashbacks. High Evolutionary has to go in the Amazing tier. I think he's the best villain out of the Guardians trilogy. Miguel O'Hara from Across the Spider-Verse, amazing. I mean, the theme, the little theme, sorry about that, is great. The animation is so good. Oscar Isaac's voice acting is great, but he's also just a really compelling character. He's not really even a villain. He's just trying to do good. But by doing that good, he's also trying to erase Miles from existence in a way, because Miles technically wasn't supposed to exist because of the multiversal shenanigans that Kingpin was doing, along with the Doctor who eventually becomes Spot, in which I'm also going to put Spot in the Amazing tier. It's so weird that I'm putting a dude named Spot in the Amazing tier, and he's not even in the third act of the movie until the final scene. He's the bad guy for the first 2/3 of the film, and then he just disappears, and then Miguel O'Hara becomes the main villain. But like he starts off as this villain of the week, sort of goofy little dude, and then becomes gradually more threatening, and like, oh no, this dude's a threat. This is a real Spider-Man villain. Like, Spider-Man did a thing that affected him, and now he wants revenge for Spider-Man. It's a classic Spider-Man villain trope, but it's done really well. The animation's great. I mean, Across the Spider-Verse is a masterpiece, and it's a shame that it's taking so long for Beyond the Spider-Verse to come out. But I'm willing to wait if they give us something like Across the Spider-Verse again. Dark Flash from The Flash. What went wrong there? I mean, what went wrong with the whole Flash movie? I enjoyed it in theaters, if I'm being honest. But the more I've thought about the film and sat on it, yeah, it's not good. And the CGI is just awful, and what they do with Dark Flash here is just stupid. The villain lady from Blue Beetle, I can't remember her name. So similar to the Shazam ladies, I'm putting her there. And I hate to do another one in a row, but Dar-Ben from the Marvels is in the what tier. I get her motivation. She's trying to fix Kree, because Captain Marvel unintentionally broke their planet and made it hard for them to breathe, to get energy, to drink water. So she's trying to restore the planet Kree for not the planet Kree, sorry, Hala, for the Kree. My bad. But she's just so boring. You know, she's like a worse Ronin, which the reason why Ronin worked was because he contrasted so much with the silly, goofy Guardians. And here she doesn't really contrast that much because she's not nearly as serious as Ronin was. Oh boy, Ezekiel Sims from Madam Web. Guys, I think I'm going to have to make a new tier just for this guy. We're going to give this guy a new tier, and we're just going to call this tier Madam Web Guy, because this is probably one of the worst movie villains I have ever seen in anything ever. His motivation is so stupid. I must kill these 3 girls because I had a vision that they would kill me in the future at this specific apartment. Okay, so then move from that apartment so you don't die at that apartment, and stop trying to be a bad guy so they don't have a reason to kill you. Every line of dialogue he has is hilariously dubbed over, so it doesn't even match his lips. And the performance in general is awful. I feel bad for the actor who plays him. He's so stupid. That movie in general is so stupid, but the villain in that film is one of the worst I've ever seen. It's a very fun movie to watch with friends, though. I'll give it that. Alright, next up is Cassandra Nova from Deadpool and Wolverine. I'm going to put Cassandra Nova in the good tier. I think she mainly works because Emma Corrin is great in the role. The character has a very simple but interesting look to her. She has like the elongated fingernails, and the visual effects of the hand going through the heads of people to do the sort of Xavier thing is super gnarly and cool looking. And she works really well in contrast with Deadpool and Wolverine. She's more serious than Deadpool, but more jokey than Wolverine, and I think that creates a really good dynamic between the three of them. But mainly she works just because the tone of the movie and the performance. I think it's very solid, and she's works for the movie, which is the most important part of a character in a movie, is to work for the movie. Null and the xenophage dudes from Venom 3, yeah, no. What happened there? Null has like 3 seconds of screen time. He's nothing, and then the xenophages are just big monsters. Venom 3 was unfortunately pretty bad, and having a bad version of Null and uninteresting monsters did not help it in any way. The Rhino from Craven. Sony, please stop. Awful. No. Stupid. The leader from Captain America 4. I enjoyed Captain America 4, despite the internet saying otherwise. The leader, however, was, I think, the weakest aspect of the film. His design is kind of bad, doesn't look very good. And for a guy who supposedly sees every probability and is a super genius, he kind of has a stupid plan, which is the opposite of the new Lex Luthor. While it's cool that they finally brought him back after so many years after The Incredible Hulk, completely wasted. Red Hulk, I'm going to put in the OK tier, even though he really isn't a villain. He's the president of the United States, and he's being manipulated by the leader, and the leader wants revenge on the president. But since the leader had sort of manipulated his blood with like the radioactive gamma pills, he activates the Red Hulk. And admittedly, the Red Hulk fight is really sick, and that's honestly one of the reasons why I enjoyed the film, was the Red Hulk fight. But Harrison Ford, weirdly enough, doesn't sleep through this movie. He's actually really good as Thaddeus Ross. We probably won't see him again, which is a bit of a shame, but I think the way they did Ross in Captain America 4 was one of the better aspects of Captain America 4, so that's why I'm putting him here. Valentina Allegra de Fontaine from Thunderbolts, and to a lesser extent from Wakanda Forever and the end credits of Black Widow and episode or two of Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I'm going to put her in the good tier. In general, Thunderbolts is one of the best things the MCU has put out in a long time, and she works as the primary antagonist of the film. She's very much a politician trying to cover up the shady crap that she's done. It sounds a suspicious amount like the current president we have trying to cover up certain Jeffrey files, if you know what I mean. Obviously, she didn't do those specific things, but she did other bad things like pretty much murder and bad experimentation and corruption and everything else. But she's trying to just get rid of the team that eventually becomes the Thunderbolts to cover her butt. Julia Louis-Dreyfus is great, even though I think there are some moments where I think she's a little bit too light for my taste. If I had any criticism of Thunderbolts, it would be that sometimes there's a few lines that she said that weren't really all that funny, but she works for the movie. You know what really does work for Thunderbolts, though? The Void. So I'm going to put The Void in the amazing tier. The Void in this movie is more of an abstract concept and a manifestation at the same time. And The Void is one of the reasons why I think Bob/the Sentry is arguably the best new character that the MCU has had post-Endgame, other than maybe Yelena. Obviously, I think their best character is still Wanda, but as far as brand new post-Endgame characters, I think Bob/Sentry and Yelena are my two favorites because of Thunderbolt. But The Void is the physical manifestation of depression, and it really comes together in the final 20 minutes or so of Thunderbolts, of the real meaning of the film, that togetherness and communication and just being with people. While it might not be a direct fix to mental health problems, it certainly helps. The way that The Void is also visualized, just the blank silhouette, is brilliant, and the shadowing of people is super creepy and haunting and gnarly and cool at the same time. I think the way that they did The Void was great, even though it's not necessarily directly a villain. It's just the manifestation of emptiness in Bob that violently attacks outwardly. I think it's great. And it's one of the reasons why Thunderbolts is one of the best movies of the year, but also one of the best MCU movies. And last, but certainly not least, are the three primary antagonists from James Gunn's Superman. First up with the Engineer. She's okay. There's a line of dialogue she has in the Fortress of Solitude towards the end of the first act that's pretty stupid. Like, yeah, Lex knows what you're talking about, lady. You didn't need to say that. But I really love the way that they visualize her powers, like the nanites, like the buzz blades, and being able to fly and doing all these like cannon things, I think is really cool. He works really solidly as a unique henchman to Lex Luthor. And then Ultraman, I'm gonna put in the OK tier. He's pretty much just like a robot who's controlled by Lex Luthor, but a clone of Superman. But he works really great for the movie. And then last, but certainly not least, is Nicholas Holt's version of Lex Luthor. I think he has easy potential to be up in that iconic tier after another movie or two, because he's already my favorite depiction of Lex Luthor. I love this dude. I love how petty he is. I love how he's just ultimate hater. I loved every bit of screen time he had. Nicholas Hoult is great in the movie. I love just the little way he enunciates things differently than how you might think he would. It's a really unique performance from him. And he gets the snot kicked out of him by a dog. That was really satisfying. So, that is my tier list for most comic book movie villains, at least post the year 2000. I don't think I have all that many controversial or hot takes in this tier list, but let me know what you think. What are some of your favorite comic book movie villains, and why is it the Joker? I kid, but Heath Ledger's Joker is my all-time favorite movie villain, so of course he's the best. Remember to subscribe to the channel if you watch this way overly long video. Stay tuned for a Fantastic Four review out as soon as I see the movie, hopefully. Check out my Letterboxd if you would. Marvel, be nice to me and put Wanda in Doomsday. Okay, bye.
If it is to be said, so it is.